Welcome everybody to the Resilient Minds podcast. I'm excited to be here with DaVinci Jeremie, and bro, I'm pumped to have you. It's good to see you. For those that don't know you yet, I'd love you just to share a little bit about yourself, how long you've been inside of Bitcoin, the focus that you've been bringing to the world for the last over a decade, and this commitment that you continue to bring to life, bro.
Well, I started YouTube back in 2008 when I realized our financial system was a complete fraud. I learned how money is just a system of transferring wealth from the poor and the middle class to the rich. And once I understood that, I realized that I had to do something and talk about it, even though I thought no one would listen, right? I figured that a few people would listen and learn about what was going on, and maybe I'd help those few people. Later on, I heard about Bitcoin because I telling people that in order to protect yourself from this current system, you need to have gold and silver assets that are not purchased with debt. Um, like, for example, your house is not a means of saving in this financial system at all. There's a better way. There are still a way to use a house to your advantage, but not as a piggy bank. That's a bad idea, right? In the end, it will you will lose everything that you believed you've saved. Now, and then once Bitcoin came on the scene, I realized that this is going to save all of human race because of what it is. Um, Bitcoin is a new form of money that was thought to be impossible. It is a digital money that can't be counterfeited or expanded in supply of money. So thus, no one can steal your wealth by printing more money or creating more money than there ever will be for Bitcoin. And on top of that is digital. So that means you can send it to anyone, anywhere, and no one can even know you have it. So that's the beauty of it. And that's why I became famous for telling people, hey, buy $1 worth of Bitcoin. That video was in 2013. Most people are familiar with that video, but I actually started talking about Bitcoin back in 2011, March of 2011. And I was the most annoying person to be with once I saw Bitcoin, and I was telling everybody at work. I just went on and on and on. Anybody who would listen, would sit down and go for a beer. I'd go on and on and on. How, oh my God, dude, you don't understand. You could get on an airplane with billions of dollars of Bitcoin, and no one's going to stop you. And that concept was just not understood or comprehended back then. So I think probably right now most people would probably understand the concept of traveling with money. Now that the $10,000 room, you can laugh at it if you're into Bitcoin.
Bro, it really is an honor to see somebody that was curious enough to go so deep and really take the time to get so focused on their own level of principles and integrity. And then to be so committed to be sharing that for such a long period of time without anyone listening, or a lot of people not listening, and to be so committed. There is something about a resilience within our own like internal genius, because there's genius in that. It's like it's like that saying of Steve Jobs. It's the crazy ones that necessarily are the ones that are willing to change the world. The ones that are really willing to go deep within themselves and believe that they can change the world are the ones that do. And I personally, I've gotten the chance to meet you in person when I was in Dubai, listen to you speak with like wisdom. We've been wanting to jump on this show for a while. I know we're always like back and forth or busy, but like it was nice to reach out after even I found even more of the depth and learned to listen through going to Bitcoin Atlantis. I spent a lot of time understanding. I sat in the front row, literally just listening, writing, paying attention, understanding the picture that was painted. And for you to be able to see that at such an early stage, I'd really love to, for anybody that's listening, because I'm sure they're curious about your aha moment, your kind of uh, self understanding, or orange pill, or Genesis, or whatever they want to call it nowadays. But really, what was that aha moment, that moment of spark of understanding that gave you the saying that there is nothing in this world? It anchored you in your core, in your spirit, to say, this is something that my ethics, my integrity, my principles are going to ground me, and I'm going to keep moving forward without anybody else on the outside world trying to limit me.
Well, if you're talking about my YouTube channel, well, as I was studying our financial system, one of the things that I studied was the history of money and so forth. And there's a lot of written history of money. Of course, the founding fathers of the United States were in a dead set against a central bank. That's part of the reason why they broke away from the British, right? So not only to stop paying the taxes, but to stop using a central bank. And this is why they wrote into the Constitution that only gold and silver is money. And they also said that evil. The only way for evil to persist is for good men to do nothing. Also, it's also I remember watching a video as a child, and it was about a beach that had been filled with fishes. It was just fishes everywhere that had been beached by the storm that had occurred the night before. And there's this little child on the beach throwing fishes back into the water. That's what he was doing, this little boy. And he was throwing the fishes back into the water. And this little girl comes up to him and says, "What are you doing?" And the boy says, "I'm trying to save the fishes." And the little girl looks around, looks one way, and then looks the other, and sees the beach is huge, filled with fish flopping around. And she said to him, "There's fish everywhere. What does it matter, right? To save these fishes, right? It won't make any difference." And he said, the boy said to the girl, "It'll make a difference to the fish that I do save." And so both the combination of those two things made me realize that I had to do a YouTube channel now. Keep in mind, I was a software developer, and as a software developer, I don't like the public eye. In fact, I never wanted to be famous growing up. I just said I'd never be famous. That's a horrible thing to do. And and so, yeah, it was a lot of strength for me to start doing my YouTube channel, but I knew I had to do it in order to, like, to be a voice out, one small voice out there to tell people, hey, you know what? The world, the way we are living in with our current financial system is a bad thing, and here's why, and here's how to save yourself. Because again, you can't. You can't fix it. You can only protect yourself.
It brings us to that famous quote by Buckminster Fuller. It's not about wanting to break down the old, it's about building the new. What do you feel like what we're doing now in terms of a community, and how we're willing to kind of add more value to the community? What do you think is a responsibility for maybe Bitcoiners that are either watching, or people that are wanting to just like build on top of like a new system? Because I really believe that the Bitcoin economy or the Bitcoin system, it can be a way that evolves our new monetary policy. So, do you have any suggestions for people that, maybe are, in private equity or in organizational behavior or in uh, family offices, and have these investor relations with numbers and money, and the economist or Austrian economics to see, hey, how can we start to integrate more into this system and development? Because essentially, what you've been doing, from my perspective, is you've been developing Bitcoin for the last decade, and you're a Bitcoin developer, like bringing it to life, so any suggestions that you would share with the community that's really needing to hear from you, or ideas that you would bring to life based off of your years of devotion?
Well, I can't speak to a family office per se because I don't know how they are structured, but I'm sure that they've purchased some ETFs. As for individuals, right? If you're a younger individual, you can build in the space, and everything is your imagination can run wild in this space and build anything you like, and it will be new, it will be fantastic, um, and you'll have an opportunity to make the unbelievable wealth, basically. And there's so much opportunity in this space. So even if you don't build yourself, you can always join other teams to help that team. So long as the vision is clear and you want to be a part of that vision. And so, yeah, there's lots. I would just suggest that people, learn as much as they can about any kind of specific niche in this area, whether it's just to learn about Bitcoin or to learn about Ethereum or to learn about how to become a technical analysis or analysis on NFTs, or analysis on projects and so forth. The space is wide open for innovation, and the beauty of it is that you don't need anybody's permission, because this whole system is a permissionless system allowing you to develop complex applications on top of what already exists. Try to do that with a bank, and they'll give you the finger.
I agree. It's beautiful. And I think that the changing in the banking system, right? What's happening right now, and how they're actually even trying, what did they call it? I think it was the CBDC. They're trying to create their own crypto, or their own like
Yeah, their
digital
own
currency.
digital currency. Now, I'm every time I hear that, I think, they already have a digital currency, right? Already. We most of us don't use cash. We just transfer it through the banking system, and that digital currency works exactly the way they want it. It prevents people from moving money too fast, right? The little peons from moving too much money because they might move it the wrong way. And yeah, and then they can control somewhat what you do, basically, through fear of, hey, you know what? Hey, if I swipe my card here, they'll probably stop that. So I'm not going to do that, right? Because I just don't need to deal with them right now, right? The banking system, having to deal with that. So without even, like, you know, telling you, hey, no, 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 I'm blocking you, right, from doing certain things, they automatically get us to do that, right? By putting the fear that, hey, you know what, I'm not going to do that because it's going to cause me to stop my credit card from working. I just can't deal with that right now. So then this is how they control us. They they manipulate us, right, and manage us, right, in our current financial system. And now you have a new financial system that's free and open, and where they can't control your money. It's fast and easy. And so these CBDCs are useless. I mean, they don't want the same thing. And so, well, that's why Bitcoin was created, so that we don't have the same thing.
Exactly.
Right? So,
The same manipulation that's been created for such a long period of time. I'm curious with your knowledge, like based off of mining, and if like, have you thought about as we power up the grid and as we secure the network, um, and the mining component of really transferring the electricity from whether it's the oil gas companies or getting into nuclear, how do you see, or have you taken a look at the component of the limitation and the story of how they've created uh, the narrative of how nuclear is not beneficial for us, and instead focusing on fossil fuels and the pollution so that they could use those carbon credits and get paid from these fossil fuels inside of or government, so that then as a result manipulate further the economic disparity that's been happening. I'm curious just to get your insight on building and powering up the grid, what you think about nuclear, and how we can continue moving to secure the network so we continue to expand the grid across the planet.
well, I mean, Bitcoin, when it comes to power consumption, it's very power sensitive. It wants to, the miners want to find the cheapest way to create power. And so they come up with innovative ways of doing so. And not only that, let's say you want to create a dam, which is most um, environmentally friendly, but supposedly, depending on how you look at it, right? And so you want to build that, but you're going to produce a lot of electricity that no one can use when you do that, because you're going to do it in a new area and there's enough electricity there. And so people need to use some electricity, but not as much as that dam is going to produce. Well, now you have a use case for using all that electricity that it can produce with Bitcoin mining. And as the city grows, you just reduce the mining. Yes, that will pose a problem that, hey, wait a second, well, I'm going to make more money with the mining. Right? The expensive energy of mining than paying customers. But yeah, that's another problem to solve later down the line. Now, also, miners find unique ways to offset the costs or reduce the cost of mining. Some have gone the route of like geothermal. Some have also gone the other way of like, hey, wait a minute. If you already use electricity and you need it to produce heat, well, our mining equipment produces heat. And so why don't you use the heat from the mining equipment instead of having the heat just be dissipated into whatever you're using it for, right? Um, you're currently going to need heat, so you're going to produce heat from the mining equipment you can use it for, like a steam bath or whatever. And then you get Bitcoin free, basically. So there's many ways, right? That the Bitcoin mining actually helps our environment, and we'll find new and unique ways to produce energy. Now, the real problem is not energy, the environment and energy use for Bitcoin, because energy is so abundant, it's ridiculous, right? If you think you have the right to control what people use energy for, well, pretend there's a God who says, you know what, I'm gonna decide how much, what the energy use case for. Oh, you know what? The sun uses a lot, produces a lot of energy that goes to waste into general space, and only a small fraction of it goes onto this planet. Maybe we should just out the sun so we could avoid, save on energy. Yeah, we would not like that, right? Because, we like to live, right? Yes. So whatever you use your energy for, right, to either to live, right, or to even entertain yourself, it's the proper use of it, of energy, and no one could say otherwise. And people who do, well, you know what, they're the same people who want to control you and decide what you can do in your life and what you can't. And if you're not hurting anybody, and I don't think I don't see how you could say Bitcoin mining is hurting anybody when you're if you say that coal is hurting people, well, you've already been using it before, so what's the difference, right? And Bitcoin's using it now, just like you're using it before, so it's not an issue. Besides, these carbon credits are just a new form, a way of funding the global government, which is what they're trying to do in the end.
Yeah, so I think that, and from my perspective, I think with the coal and the a lot of these like natural gas flares and things like this, my perspective is like, because of the carbon credits, like you said, they've been um, using it to fund the global governments in the ways that they needed to. But then in addition to that, they've outlawed kind of like a lot of nuclear plants and things that have been really, because of the fear associated with weapons of mass destruction and the manipulation of nuclear energy and how powerful that like can be utilized for
Mhm.
our nature, because of the egoic perspective of wars and the facilitation and the monetary of how wars have been funded by um, these fossil fuel uh, organizational institutional bullshit stories. So it's interesting how it actually just becomes this circular economy of pollution, affecting the environment, paying for war, manipulation, and it's just been this like circular economy throughout the government that has really been funding and using such corruption based off of a manipulation of communication to us as people. And so my curiosity, and now what's being unfolded even more with the nuclear energy and how we can actually use that radioactive waste to use fuel and distill it to distill it to make it fuel for planes, for travel, for things like this that are really effective with limited pollution into the environment, and then also the electricity that can be implemented for the miners to power up the grid. So I'm curious what, from your perspective, I know that there is an element where we're really building the future now. Like, DaVinci, you've been part of this for such a long time, and more people are going to come to you as we continue to build the future now, and we all build together. So how do you find, or how do you feel when people are stuck in this old methodology, in this old paradigm? Obviously you have a lot of compassion because you've walked the path for such a long time, continuing moving forward with this space of grace, and I see a lot of humility in the way that you move. And do you get when you're challenged and you're seeing this type of manipulation happen, how do you face it, and how do you suggest people that are aware of this type of manipulation, how do you find they can actually approach the global population, because we're still so small as a community compared to what's happening?
Well, you can't, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. It's just like gravity, right? It exists, right? So you have to protect yourself. from gravity by not jumping off of a cliff,
Yeah.
right? Because it's gonna affect you, right? Unless you have some sort of means to prevent you from falling, you're going to fall, right? And that's the way it is. That's how you need to look at the whole system of manipulation, anything that you don't like in the system and you can't change. It is effectively gravity to you. You don't like gravity, build some wings, fly. Sorry, that's the only way you've got. Gravity, you can't just say, well, I should be able to fly, I should be able to float. Yeah, if ifs and buts were cherries and nuts, we all have a Merry Christmas. But you know what? That's not true. We have to like live in the world that it is, the way physics works, and the same with corruption, same with governments and how they work and how they steal and how they loot, pillage, and plunder. And you have to live in that system and build within that system, and that's the way it is.
I love because we are building in parallel, without fighting, right? Which is really beautiful. I think that that's the gift is we're deciding to live in a space of possibility, right? Instead of disempowerment. What do you think that as we continue to build within that realm, again, going back to nuclear, why do you think nuclear could be such an important, like nuclear power plants, nuclear generation from the power? Why do you think that could, do you think, first of all, that that could be a really great possibility? And if so, then why?
Well, what I think is not relevant, I think it's what the consumer wants, basically. And so, if they want cheap electricity, and they can, and it makes sense, then yeah, we should use nuclear. I'm not 100% sure if that's the right way to go, but you know, if the currently we've used nuclear before, and yeah, the only issue is that the spent rods have to be disposed of in a very careful way because they will be hazardous to life for a very, very long time. Um, so I can't say with a definitive answer on whether or not nuclear is the right way to go. But I can say is whatever way we can produce our energy, we should use it. And weigh the costs and benefits and try to come up with the best solutions we can. That's all we can do as human beings is come up with the best solutions we can. And yeah, you could say, well, we don't have control over that. Only larger people, larger entities do. And yeah, that's true. It is true. And that's the part of the gravity that you can't control. You have to accept what is, right? So if you want to solve the situation of, if you believe it's really critical to solve the issue of pollution, yeah, go ahead, do it yourself, right? Don't sit around and expect the government to do it. You need to go ahead and do it yourself, right? If you do sit around for the government to do it, I can guarantee they'll do it wrong. And how do I know? Okay, well, the government started a war on poverty and poverty won. Poverty is just increasing now. The government said that everybody needs to we need to have affordable housing. Now we have non-affordable housing. The government said that, you know what, everybody should have affordable education. Now we don't have affordable education. The government said we should all have affordable healthcare. Now we don't have affordable healthcare. You're seeing a pattern here. So effectively, what you're saying is that if you allow the government to control whether or not we have electricity and power, you damn sure we're not going to have electricity and power. If you're saying that we should allow the government to make sure that we don't do, that the environment doesn't get destroyed, we're gonna have the environment destroyed 100%. That is the reality. So never vote for that change, for governments to solve the problem. They won't. They'll do the opposite 100% of the time. And so that's the only power you've got. And yeah, and the other power is, of course, to actually do it yourself. And don't worry about governments trying to control whether or not it's a good idea. Just do it without their permission and get it done.
Such great feedback. And as we kind of shift into governments and political, from my perspective, instability, do you find that as we continue to kind of build our community, our network, our sovereign responsibility, how do you see the future of politics and governments? Do you see them being useful? Do you see them, because I mean, the pattern that I see, and I'll say from my perspective, is that they're completely useless based off of the way that they've been kind of taking care of the people, and they haven't taken responsibility for serving the people. Again, we saw the pattern. You just really beautifully outlined it. And then in addition to that, do you see that as we continue to maybe get curious about what Bitcoin can bring to the table, do you see that kind of being mitigated, taken away, or do you see it living in parallel?
The question you're asking me is, do I see government and what living in parallel? Sorry.
Do you see the parallel economies living with each other, or do you see one overtaking the other, or the politicians being available? Are they still going to be available? Like how do you see it working with the parallel economies?
I think it's going to be irrelevant. Eventually, the old economy will become irrelevant. Eventually, slowly, people will start using money that's fair and honest, and they'll start noticing that, hey, wait a second, people over there with the fair and honest money is doing better than the people who are not, and that will just move everyone there, and that's just the way it is. Governments are to be ignored, basically, the best you can, and just because politicians only go into into politics just for themselves, to make money and screw everybody. Not every single politician, of course, not every single one, I guess. I agree, but the majority of them, once they get in, right, the system actually changes them as they go. Most of them start off with a real noble goal, and then once they get in, they get changed, right? I can give you an example of that where this lady I met. Oh, by the way, I'm gonna have to cut this off in another 5 minutes, but this lady, she was a politician in Norway, and she said that she can't define what a woman is in her any kind of political debates, right? Because if she does, she'll just disappear because that's what she sees. She sees other politicians say, define what a woman is, and then everybody supports that politician, and then they just disappear. So this is the system. So now she can't do that. And so that's just one example of one example. And I'm sure there are many,
Yeah.
right? So they're not in charge. Someone else is. And that's the real world you're living in. And so they basically, once they realize that they can't really make any change, they can only get theirs. That's what they do.
So basically, what I hear is that a lot of FUD, a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, based off of manipulation that has just been happening for so long. So these are just another actors playing in a play to really integrate a collective misappropriation of what's real, honest, and true. And so I'm excited because we're on the other side now, and we get to create the future with certainty, without this FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, so that we can move forward with honest and transparent direction. So, brother, I know you got to go, so I'm going to
Mhm.
be very conscious of this next few minutes. What are you up to now? How can people find out more about what you're doing? How can they connect with you if they have any more questions or want to work with you?
Yeah, well, you can find me on all my social media if you just Google DaVinci J15. That's DaVinci J and 1 5, DaVinci J15. I have like Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all the same name, right? Even my Telegram, right? Pretty simple. My username, the reason why I have that name is because that was a username that I agreed a long time ago that was I was going to use that nobody else would probably use because hey, you know what? I just wanted to be able to register at different sites with the username and know that it was always the same. And yeah, and that's the one I chose because 15 is my 15th of September is when I was born, and so that's why 15. And yeah, that's how you find me. And I'm basically talking about Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other cryptocurrencies on all these platforms. So yeah, make sure you follow me on all those platforms.
Cool, brother. And last question: if you had 3 days left to live, what would you do?
The same thing I always do.
Beautiful, brother.
Cheers.
Big love. Appreciate you.